Hello and welcome back to Down the Slope. For the second week in a row, we're mixing up the hosts. You're listening to Harry, and we've got today with us Ewan and Liam. Greg unfortunately can't make it, but he's guaranteed us he'll be in it back next week. But guys, how we doing? Ewan, to avoid awkwardness, Ewan, how you doing?
Good, mate, yeah. Obviously, international breaks, a bit dull in it. As much as I love the Scotland game, when the Scotland game's on, it's great and you get involved, but then you sort of forget about it quite quickly, don't you? And just looking forward to Hibs being back. Obviously, Scotland are playing tomorrow night, but yeah, just looking forward to getting back to Easter Road on Saturday for a 3:00 kickoff, which feels like it's been forever as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. To be fair, we normally moan like heck at international breaks, but Liam, you can attest that this one hasn't been too shabby.
It was good on Saturday night. Very much enjoy myself. Love seeing a late winner at Hampden from a corner. There's nothing sweeter than that in life, really, is there? So, it was terrific. But I've got to say, I didn't want to be the doom and gloom merchant, but there is just something very ominous about tomorrow's trip to the Faroe Islands, and that's just. I love that it's been positioned the last 2 days. I just have to go to the Faroes and get 3 points. Aye, because we've done that consistently right enough over the last 20 years.
Was it Bertie Vokes that got a draw?
We drew 2-2
yeah.
under votes, but we also lost to the Faroe Islands as well. Don't know what campaign that was. I think it was maybe late 90s. But Bertie Votes, we drew 2-2. We're 2-0 down. A boy, can't remember the boy's name, but he was a plumber or a painter or something. We're 2-0 down after 12 minutes. My dad actually that day, but I say he got famous. He wasn't really famous, but he thought he was famous because at that time BBC used to run the wee ticker along the bottom. You could text in at the game. And he messaged in to say the only ray of light from Scotland's 2-2 draw with the Faroe Islands today has been Dougie Donnelly's hair. Because at that time, Dougie Donnelly had his hair like proper, like bleach white blonde, and he thought it was the funniest thing in history. But aye, there you go. Tangent.
Right, what about your weekend, Harry? I know you're hosting, but talk to us. First weekend down in London.
Yes, so as we mentioned on Twitter, I'm down in London now, so I'm a massive NFL fan, and I'm very blessed to actually work alongside the NFL as part of their PR company. I was at the New York Jets training on Friday, which was really cool, so getting to see the players up close and then interacting with media and sorting media out with players. And then on Sunday, I actually got to go to the game at the Tottenham Stadium. Again, doing media work, so working on the job, but yeah, what a stadium. If you are a football fan and you live anywhere near Tottenham, get yourself to a game. I know it's expensive, but the stadium itself is it's an experience, man. It's an experience.
Did you get a pint that fills up from the bottom? That seems to be the big selling point.
Yeah, I've seen the pints that fill up from the bottom, but unfortunately, as I said, I was working, so I was balancing get the cool pint or get sacked, and on this occasion, I chose not to get the cool pint. But yeah, who knows? I'm there a couple more times, so I might change my mind in the coming days. But yeah, unfortunately this week it's going to be quite a quick episode because there's not really too much going on in the Hibs front. We're going to touch on it quickly because it was an unfortunate result, but Hibs ladies the other day got off to a great start away from home to Partick Thistle, not one of the better teams in the league, 1-0 up, and then they just seemed to have an instant collapse as soon as the second half started. Went 3-1 down, then got a consolation goal, couldn't quite pull it back to 3-3. Really bad result on the back of a difficult run of games in which they showed themselves up to be quite good, and then obviously disappointment as soon as they faced one of the lower teams in the league. You probably watched most of the game than myself and Liam.
So I was keeping track of it on Twitter and stuff, and then I didn't realise that you could watch it on YouTube until, funnily enough, it was already 3-2, literally just after the 3 goals in 2 minutes. But again, from post-match and stuff, I think Dean and I think it was Leah Eddy said we just didn't really turn up. I think in the first half we were pretty good and just weren't clinical, and then it seems to have been the case in every game recently except the Hearts game that there's a spell that we're getting punished in, and conceding 2 goals in the space of a minute, albeit you then offset that with getting one back straight away. 3 goals in 2 minutes in the game, it's disappointing, to be honest. We're losing a lot of points in the last few weeks for small periods of the game, just really concentration in it, and seeing the goals back, they're pretty poor goals to lose. And like you say, I think I'd said last week that I thought it was Glasgow City up next, but I think we must be due to play them soon. It might even be this one, because I knew they were coming in the fixture list. So on the back of playing 2 of the 3 Glasgow teams to then go and technically play another Glasgow team in Partick Thistle and get beat, it's poor, to be honest. It really is.
Aberdeen and Hamilton next.
Is it? I've just totally imagined it with Glasgow City.
I'd say the only thing, just from my perspective, just following up on what you were saying, I think like I think there would have been an opportunity to build real momentum off, win against Hearts, not just because of the result, because of the occasion. And I think they'll be really disappointed that they've then gone and subsequently lost the next 2 games after that. So, that kind of real cliche that you have about teams where they build up to a really big game and then they win the big game, and then there's just this kind of like sort of dip afterwards. And sometimes it's because, and I'm not saying this is what it is, but sometimes it is because actually you've built up so much to that occasion that actually it's very difficult to then go and replicate that same level of performance in the next couple of games after. You hear coaches and top coaches talk about that quite a lot, about maintaining consistency of performance. Because I'd be honest, I look at Partick Thistle and their team and where they've, what they've done in recent years, and we shouldn't be losing that game to them.
Yeah.
If that was the men's team going in and losing that game, there'd be a lot of very unhappy vocal supporters.
I think
So I was just going to say, from our perspective, when we've been speaking to Dean from last season to this season, the objective is to be competing for the league title. And like in a league that, like the women's league at the moment, you can't afford to drop points, never mind lose to the likes of Partick Thistle, even if it is away from home. So it is a really frustrating and disappointing result.
Yeah.
But as you were saying.
No, yeah, I was just going to touch on what Liam said. It's got that, like what Liam was saying, it's like you see it a lot when maybe smaller clubs win a semi-final and then they just sort of drift through to that final, like their league campaign just falls off the face of a cliff. Or like when you see lower league teams maybe go do well in the Scottish Cup or the FA Cup down south, and you're like, you maybe go to put a bet on the following weekend thinking, oh God, they must be doing all right, and it's like they're sitting like 10th in their table. You're like, what? It probably took a lot out of them, the Hearts game. As much as it was comfortable, I think mentally there was a lot of build up and playing in front of a big crowd and stuff. I guess I do think that's probably impacted on it, and they've come back down to earth for a little bit of a bang, I would think, and hopefully the next 2 games coming up, they are winnable games, and I think it's getting to the stage where they need to win them if they want to have a successful season. In terms of like what you're saying from what Dean said, where we want to be challenging in the league, then there's no excuses not to be going to take 6 points, otherwise we won't really reach where we want to be.
Yeah, no, definitely. Unless you have any more comments on that, we can move on.
Yeah, no, I think obviously you were working yesterday. Liam was probably suffering a hangover, and I didn't realise it was on YouTube until 20 minutes to go. So,
but the good thing is, at least the games are now easily accessible. Look out, we'll share every time there's a link to watch the game for free. We'll obviously share it on the Twitter. So make sure that you do support the girls as much as possible. They have got a cracking squad. Unfortunate result, but still got to remain optimistic for the season. Against some of the bigger teams, we've actually put in good shifts, but results come and go. We're Hibs fans. We're used to this. Speaking of results coming and going, we went away to Tannadice a few weeks back and we got a very nice result, a 3-1 victory over the Arabs, and saw us through in the cup. So I just thought we'll talk a bit about that game and the lessons that we learned, and then we can preview the games coming up this weekend. So in that game, what impressed you most about Hibs, and why do you think that we managed to succeed over Dundee United in that matchup?
Our finishing, and I'll be honest, that was probably about it. I think that game was really similar to what we had seen between the 2 international breaks, but I think in the first half we had been pretty clinical. I think obviously myself, you and Greg were at the game, and I think the 3 of us were in agreement that we'd actually been pretty shite and we were 3-0 up. I don't know how it came across like on the TV and stuff, but I think it'll be a difficult game at the weekend. I think Dundee United did make it difficult for us that night, but I don't know. I think if we weren't 3-0 up at the break, then I probably would have expected us to like dominate more in the second half, if that makes sense. Like I think it's a cup game, like you're not going to get rewarded for goal difference, etc. So if it had been 1-0 or 2-0 at half time, then I think we probably would have been more commanding in the second half, if that makes any sense in a backwards way.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Liam, what did you? Obviously, you weren't at the game, unfortunately, but what did you make of it?
I mean, similar. I think we were clinical in front of goal. I thought some of our build-up play was really good as well. I think it does a wee bit of disservice just talk about the finishing, not talk about some of the build-up play. I thought we did move the ball around well at different spells. I think there was perhaps a slightly deluded notion that we decided to just sit back for the entirety of the second half. I think the reality is that Dundee United were the home team and they came back at us and had to get themselves back into the game. They managed to get 1 goal in the process of doing so. So it's not as if I think we were like kind of penned in for long periods and we're really struggling. There was probably only really a short period after they scored that I was really worried. So I think with all that said, I think we probably will need to be better on Saturday to win the game. I don't think that's unfair. I think Dundee United have got. I still think they're pretty limited as a football team. I've spoken about that, recently on the podcast. I think they've changed a huge amount in their time under Tam Courts and Mickey Mellon. I don't think they're the finished article, but they do have some very good individual players. So we'll need to be better to win the game. But I expect we will be better, particularly Easter Road.
And one more thing I want to touch on from that game, the refereeing performance. We do like to bash referees when they go against us. It's quite fair to say that the referee, I think it's quite harsh on him because the decisions from his perspective on the pitch were right, but when you see them back, he did have a few clangers.
And what I would say about it was Willie calling that night as well, though. And we criticised refs, and look, it wasn't a penalty, but the referee's not responsible for the offside.
Yeah,
I mean, true. That's as much as I don't think any offsides have went against us this season off the top of my head. I'm still not entirely sure about the goals at Ibrox, but the lack of conversation around them would probably suggest it's not. But Willie Collum got the penalty decision wrong. I think when you see it in live play, could you argue that it probably looked a penalty? Maybe that's pushing it, I don't know. But I think it's good to hold our hands up and say that Hibs have been on the benefit of some decisions this season. Just unfortunately, 2 weeks ago, we were on the wrong end of things, and let's not go over old ground.
But Liam, touching on that, are we due the rub of the green? If it counted as balancing out now, if the referee gives us a favourable position, or does that kind of balance out from those two games?
That's another fucking hopeless football and cliche that it all balances out over the course of the season. I think there's definitely an element of what's it called? A fancy way of saying it might be redistribution of luck. I think probably does happen, but then luck seems to shine on some clubs more than it does on others. If you look at contentious decisions down the years, there's a certain club or clubs who do seem to benefit more from questionable refereeing decisions than others, and actually quite a lot of it time retrospectively doesn't get overturned. I've quite enjoyed just fucking massive tangent, but I've quite enjoyed this last sort of week ever since Porteous's red card was confirmed as not being rescinded. All of the Rangers fans talking about how redredging up how hard done by Morelos is, and then the replies with all of the red cards that he should have had since he last received a red card, and this narrative that he's all of a sudden a changed man. He's exactly the same player as he was before. It's just that he now gets away with it because Gerrard has turned the media narrative on its head and painted Morelos out to be some kind of victim. The other thing I want to just say while we're on Morelos, have any of you seen him being photoshopped onto Glenn Kamara's body?
And with Sky.
So because they didn't want to fat shame him.
Well, I thought. Well, has it not been? Did Sky not do it at the start of the season? Did Sky not do it at the start of the season as well? Because obviously Morelos literally went missing.
Back overweight. He came back so overweight. I just didn't think they wanted to fat shame him.
I do you know what? That's much better than my actual reason that I thought it was. But because obviously he never done pre-season at all, did he? Because he just literally was like, and that's the thing, they all love him in that. Like, mind we were good tits because Effie Ambrose showed up about 2 days late. Morelos showed up about 2 days before the season started. It was like, all right, lads, like, I'm back with my half haircut. Just going back, just to bring us back to Dundee United, Harry, I know you are hosting, but I want to get your point on this. Obviously, we were 3-0 up against Dundee United at half-time. Dundee United have only scored more than one goal once this season in all competitions, and that was in the League Cup group stages. So do you think if Hibs can get off to a fast start, which we've shown this season we're capable of, that we'll have too much for them?
I think their main problem is they're just kind of they lost Shankland and they didn't replace him. I think that all their good players and their tricky players are further back in the team. I think I was going to mention him to you guys, but I think that Giando Fuchs is a very good player. His ball retention is fantastic, and he's the tempo of the team. I'd like to see Jake Doyle-Hayes. Hopefully, he's back up to speed. I think if he nullifies him, then I don't really think we've got much of a threat from Dundee United. I think that their wing backs are playing okay. Against Celtic, if you watch the highlights back for that, they actually got forward a lot and they actually looked very decent. And again, another refereeing decision that was absolutely abhorrent. They should have had a Stonewall penalty and debatably a red card as well.
Oh, yeah.
A favour that would have put them 2-1 up. But yeah, I was very sceptical of Tam Courts when he first got the job, but I think he's doing a stellar job. for me, I'd rather build from the back forward, and I think that's what he's done. Because as you say, they've only conceded, they've only scored more than once in the group stages, but they're not conceding many goals at all.
Nah, I think so, in their last 5 games, we're the only team to beat them.
Yeah, it's strange to say it, but they are actually a good team.
They're hard to beat, aren't they? Aye. And obviously that Fuchs that you're talking about, Liam, I've
been banging that drum since his first game. I think if we could get him in and let Gogic go in the summer, I think that would be a huge upgrade in that position. That's no disrespect to Alex Gogic.
I don't think he's quite as physical as that, to be honest. I think he's better on the ball.
He's better on the ball, but he is a ball winner. If you look at what he's supplied to do in that game, he is a ball winner. It's just that he happens to also be able to play a wee bit.
It's like a Gogic and a Jake Doyle-Hayes body, isn't it? Yeah. In terms of size, structure.
More athleticism than Doyle-Hayes as well. Gets about more. I think he would complement our current midfield brilliantly, because I think he's got all the assets that we perhaps. I'm not saying we don't have them, but I don't think we've got them in spades.
Virgin on if we sign any more centre midfielders, and we know Virgin on Pat Fenlondy's. Just
competition for places, mate. In the Pat Fenlon days, we had loads of central midfielders, but yet no competition for places because neither of them were any good. I love the relentlessness, by the way. Is it Hibs Programs on Twitter tweeted happy 33rd birthday to Matt Thornhill today, and I'd forgotten about Matt Thornhill since we last done that podcast 6 months ago. And I'm thinking, fair play to you, like, you will say happy birthday to absolutely every Hibs player.
I know. That's the like. They must just have a database or something. Like every time Hibs have signed, like they must have, whenever they started up, done it, and then every time Hibs signed someone. But like some of the players, that who was it? Like Chris Killen the other day as well and stuff. And that one, I was a bit like, oh, that's a bit. I was like, that's.
He was decent for us.
Good for Hibs, but a little bit controversial with what he's been up to post then.
They'll be wishing happy 21st birthday to Danny Handling next week, because he's still a young prospect. Still cutting about the first team.
All right, boys. Harry's hosting tonight, and I like a tangent, but we're not turning it into Tangent FC. Come on, boys, let's wrap it back round. But anyway, apologies for cutting you off, but we'll go back to the game. So this coming weekend, we had a few players out against Rangers. Obviously, McGuinness dropped out. We've got Murphy borderline fit. If we've got a fully fit team, the first question for you is, after his performance at Tannadice, which I thought was one of his better performances this season, is Scott Allen starting at the moment in a fully fit Hibs team?
Yes.
Liam, you're laughing. What's your opinion?
Which, by the way, I probably should have apologised for my Scott Allen slander a month ago, but I think just now he does. Yeah, I would say.
All right, and Liam, before we get explanations, what do you think?
No. If Jamie Murphy's back fit, I'd play Jamie Murphy.
Wait.
And I'm not 100%. I'm not 100% on board the Jamie Murphy bus, but I think. I can think of what I was trying to say there. But I do think he's Jamie Murphy train. I wouldn't call it a hype train. He's a bit too old to have a hype train.
Carriage, maybe the Jamie Murphy carriage.
Horse and carriage. He runs a wee bit like a horse and carriage, doesn't he? Actually, Jamie Murphy. Jamie Murphy would start, and McGuinness would play in the 10 for me, which would probably be better than any place to start and starting lineup.
Fair.
Unless you want to go back to the Paul Heckenbottom days, playing him on the right wing.
Scott Allen wouldn't start in our strongest 11. I don't think. I guess I don't know. I think like what we said, there are options, but for me, it wouldn't necessarily be a toss-up between whether he starts over Murphy or that. I think the conversation would be: do you need Newell and Doyle-Hayes? Would, I guess, be the question mark. I would be inclined to say yes. So I would probably say I jumped the gun a bit early there. We're saying Scott Allen would start in a full strength.
He's not got the hang of this giving an opinion stuff, Harry, has he?
I know.
Much better. Do you know what it is? I think I'm trying so hard to get back on the Scott Allen train after being so critical of him for months. But yeah, no, I think in a full strength Hibs team he's probably not starting, but I do think a game like Dundee United is probably a game for Scott Allen. So,
well, before I get your opinion on the full team, I'll go through some individuals that I think are important to highlight. Obviously, Ryan Porteous, as we mentioned, didn't get his red card rescinded. So, are we going for the old veteran of Darren McGregor, or are we trusting in the new England under-20 captain, Mr. I've forgotten his first name, Wood?
Nathan Wood.
Nathan Wood. Who are we going for, McGregor or Wood?
Nathan Wood for me. I don't see the point in signing him if you're not going to play him.
And Liam?
I'd have no issues with Darren McGregor starting the game. I think it will be Nathan Wood, but I'd have no issues with Darren McGregor starting the game. Played really well against Dundee United 2 or 3 times last season.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
Played exceptionally well against them in the game at Tannadice, I seem to remember. So I've no issues with Darren McGregor, but I think it will be Nathan Wood, because I think he has been signed to play in a couple of games for England in the 20s, hopefully giving him that bit of match sharpness that he'll need coming into the team.
I think this game, because obviously Portugal's is going to miss the Aberdeen away game as well. So it's like, it is for me, whoever starts against Dundee United will start against Aberdeen as well. So it's, if he's going to want McGregor's experience for Aberdeen away, then I would start McGregor against Dundee United as well. Does that make sense? But
unless Wood stinks the gap out against Dundee United.
None
of us have seen him play. We're basing wanting him to play on his pedigree for being in England on the 20s player and being highly rated, but none of us have seen this kid play. So there is an element of going into the unknown, and I know you can't see every single player play for your club before they take the field, but I appreciate the comments about you're going to sign him, you've got to play him, but yeah, I think it's also really hard to make a judgment on someone who.
Yeah, and this is the thing as well. I mean, like, is he a left? I don't know if he's a left footer or if he's a right footer. Like, there's obviously.
I think he's right. I think he's right footed, because I think he's played the games he has played for Middlesbrough. He's played at right back, so I'd make the assumption he's going to play. He is right footed. So I did read somewhere that he played a bit of holding midfield as well. So that sometimes just a wee bit alarm bells for me by a centre half when they've been tried. Right back, defensive midfield. That's maybe some like Hibs biases of like playing players in positions they don't belong in. That just gives me a bit of PTSD.
I wonder if it might be dependent on what formation we play as well. Because I think if we go back to a 4 at the back, then I think Wood will definitely play.
Well, you're skipping ahead. I was gonna. That was my next question. So I'll interrupt you once again. Good golly gosh. And just on behalf of Greg, before we move on from that question, he would like to say that he would like to see both of them start and have nothing, Paul Hanlon out the team, as well as half my timeline. So goodbye, Paul Hanlon. Hello, McGregor and Wood. But moving on to the next question, you were touching on it there. Since Chris Cadden came back into the team against Hearts, we've seen Cadden and McGinn start, I believe, every game since then. So it's adopted more of a back 5 or back 3, if you will. Is that a formation and system that you'd like to see moving forward? Personally, I think we were playing a bit better at the start of the season before we switched, but it has been a more difficult run of games, so it is kind of a hard sample to judge. But what type of formation would you guys like to see? Are you comfortable with Nisbet and Boyle up top, or would you rather see Boyle out on the wing again and Nisbet holding up top?
Comfortable with both, but if Jamie Murphy's fit, then I would go back to what was working extremely well at the start of the season, and that be 4-2-3-1, and ultimately it would mean Chris Cadden's dropped, and I don't know, it might be harsh, might not be harsh, but it's interesting because I'd say Cadden's probably just had his best game for us, even just that half-hour spell with his assist and stuff, and I would say that's probably his best game for us since Dundee United away, when he played 3-5-2 as well.
I thought he played right against Hearts as well, to be fair to him.
Well, again, he played right wing back then as well, didn't he? So, but I think Hibs play better 4-2-3-1, at least on the evidence of this season. I think it gets the best out of Boyle, McGuinness, Murphy. So Cadden's probably a byproduct of that, I would say.
Yeah, and Liam, yourself, what type of system would you like to see Hibs playing at the weekend?
4-2-3-1, same as you. I think some of that does probably hinge on whether or not Kyle McGuinness is fit, because obviously he missed out last time out, and it does apparently have a knock, and I don't think there's been any updates since then. So, and we know his kind of recent injury issues that we'll just hope, fingers crossed, it's nothing more long term, because he's been one of our players of the season so far. And
one more question I have. I know that Greg was banging this drum whilst he was out injured, but what's your opinion on potentially starting Cadden at right back over Paul McGinn? Do you think that's a debate to be had, or do you not think that Cadden has the defensive capabilities required for a right back as opposed to a wing back?
I've been for that. I've definitely been for that. I think that would be for Dundee United at home rather than Aberdeen away, though. in my opinion, because I think you needed someone who was going to do the defensive side of things against Aberdeen away. Not because I think Aberdeen are any great shakes, but I just think there's likely to be slightly more pressure on us at Pittodrie from a defensive point of view. So I think if we're going to do it against Dundee United, but then you could argue do it against Dundee United, and if Wood's the right sided centre back, then that's 2 new members of a back 4, and that might just be too much change.
I think Cadden could probably play right back. I think he's played there. Is it pretty well known that he played there for Oxford? Is that right? But I don't see why you would drop Paul McGinn, if I'm honest. Like, I think you could say that he had his critics at the start of the season. I don't think any of us could say that he wasn't at his best, but has he done anything wrong since probably the last international break? I know, like you say, he's maybe played as the sort of right side of a free as opposed to a fullback, but I think it'd be pretty harsh. But hey, I think as we start, it's mad how one body in terms of Jamie Murphy comes back in. We seem to be discussing a lot more options, and it's weird because I think in I was going to say in the off season, but like over the summer we were talking about how we seem to have a lot of wingers, but it still feels like Jamie Murphy's our only real option on the left, and then I think if he's available or not available, it sort of dictates what we do, as opposed to when he is available. I think we've got a lot more flexibility. I think if Jamie Murphy's not available, we have to play 3-5-2, pretty much.
I think that's fair enough. So yeah, we've discussed the key talking points. So we think that we should probably rock with a 4-2-3-1. We think that we should, like, Jack Ross has got a decision to make between McGregor and Wood, but he can't really make a wrong one. It's either trusting the new players in the door, or you've got the reliable Darren McGregor, of course. And then in the midfield, if Alan starts, it's not a disaster, but I think it's fair to say this season our strongest midfield trio has been Yule, Doyle Hayes and McGuinness. So yeah, Jack Ross, it's over to you. If you get it wrong, Greg will batter you, and that's about that.
I think, see, just interested in what you said there, Harry, with you don't think he can't make a wrong decision at centre half. If Darren McGregor plays and stinks the place out, he will get a lot of criticism for not playing Wood.
But if
I don't think
it starts and stinks the place
out,
I know a lot of flack for starting Kevin Nisbet. Like,
no, I just mean like
how long's a piece of string, mate? Come on.
No, but just on the back of what happened in the summer and the demand for a centre half, if we have then signed one and still play Dan McGregor and he maybe doesn't have his best game, then people might be out with the pitchforks a little bit. I think it's a big game at the weekend, though. I really do, with the other games in the league and what we've got coming up.
It's a huge game. It's a huge game. There's going to be a serious reaction to Hibs Twitter.
We just need to get back. This is it. I feel like, I mean, we've spoken and say, maybe we're one game away from disaster and stuff. I don't think it's quite that, but I do think it's always important to bounce back from dropped points.
Yeah.
And I think as well, just to sort of set us out again, post-international break, let's come back, get a positive result. Is it then Aberdeen and Celtic back to back? Is that right? Like, so I think it's important that we get up and running again and just because I think the more stupid it is, the more games you win, the more this sort of feel good start to the season continues. But it could disappear quite quickly, maybe because of some silly draws earlier in the season as well.
And Liam, if you want to wrap us up on the Dundee United fiasco before we go into predictions, what are you saying?
I think one last thing just on that, and we've not really revisited it. We've not talked about it again since last season. But obviously, last season's home record was a source of disappointment for quite a lot of people. And this season we've been better at home so far, but there has been drop points. And I think, from my point of view, I think one of the things I would like to see us kind of stamp out relatively early is this myth that we're no good at home. And I think one of the enablers in helping us doing that so far this season has been playing with 2 wingers. So I think what I'm saying is I'm champing at the bit for Boyle and Murphy both to start, and us just to have a really good go at them for the start, because that's what we get excited about, coming to Easter Road and watching exciting attacking football, watching 2 wingers both capable of taking their man on and beating them down the outside. So that's all I want to say. I also think we need to get the ball out of the centre of the park against Dundee United, because I think that's where they're strongest, in the middle of the park. I think they've got players in there that are born to do that role defensively, and actually we want to stretch the game as much as possible in the wide areas. So that's how I'm going to wrap it up. And I'm just going to go straight into my prediction.
Fuck off! I've got stuff to say.
See, to
Oh,
be
you got
honest, I was going to say
something
that's the most astute bit of preview we've had so far. So I was going to ask you to round that off with your prediction. So please go on.
I'm going to go statement victory. Hibs 3, Dundee United 0.
Is that a statement? Is that not expected? Can I just jump on what Liam said there as well? I know we're trying to wrap up and stuff, but I think the most enjoyable game that Hibs have played this season was Ross County at home. And Jamie Murphy and Martin Boyle absolutely ran the show that day. You know what I mean? Josh Doig was good going down the left side as well. And then with I think stretching the game's massive. I think the midfield, if the midfield play well, we win the game. Like Joe Newell obviously scored away at Dundee United. Scott Allen scored. Like I think the midfield really need to boss the game, and if they do, then I'm not that worried. I think Harks and Fuchs are decent, but I think Joe Newell and Jake Doyle Hayes are better. And if they play to their capacity, and then whoever it is, whether that be Allen or McGuinness in front of them, I think we'll have too much, and I will go larger statement victory, 5-1 Hibs.
5-1. Right, so we got 3-0, we got 5-1, and I'm supposed to be the happy clapper around.
It's time we poop up. It feels like just that was. I don't know if it was before or after the Rangers game, but I was seeing stuff about when we pumped Hamilton 6-0 early doors in Lennon's last season, and it feels like a while. And I've got a prediction as well or not a prediction, I've got a demand. I want us to score a direct free kick. It feels like forever since we've done that.
All right, well, can I just say thank you to the two of you for completely dispelling all the preview we've done. Dundee United are a good team. They don't concede many goals.
You call them a good team.
You said they don't concede many. I said they don't score many.
Aye, so it's just going to be that goal fest. Aye, all right, you pair. I'm going to go.
So you got 0-0.
No, I'll stick it. I'll go 2-1 Hibs. No, I genuinely think that I think if we score first, I think it'll be a comfortable victory. If they score first, then it is going to be shut down the hatches and do our very best to pry them open, which they've proven can be quite a difficult task. Even the likes of Celtic and Rangers have struggled to score against them this season. Their home record in our favour has been a lot better than their away record. So we just got to hope that we can get that first goal. I've got kind of St Johnstone vibes from them this season, in the sense that if they do take control of the game, then it might be a very boring, dull affair. But hopefully that doesn't happen, and we can move on from that. So not too much going on in the world of Hibs. We did find out that Ian Gordon, who is Ron Gordon, the new chairman's son, is taking over as new head of recruitment, I believe his role is. Personally, I'm not looking too much into that. I think it's quite a common thing for people to get the family involved at the club. I don't know if he played a massive part in the Mueller transfer. Have you guys got any insight into that I might be missing?
I think he was credited with having a big influence on it. Look, as much as there's I would still say growing interest from fans around the run-ins of clubs, without knowing the fundamentals of what that title entails in terms of day-to-day, like, we can't really comment on it too much. I think people might be a little bit worried, like, what's his experience in football and stuff, but I would doubt that the head of recruitment's job is to identify the players. I would think his job profile is more selling the club and finalising the deals alongside Ben Kensel, as opposed to, I think people like Calvin Charlton and stuff like that, and Jack Ross probably have much more say in the identification process, and then it gets handed to the upstairs folk to sort of sort it at that stage. It's
Maybe we'll get him on the pod, find out what his job is.
Aye.
Hey.
So Ian and Ron, we know that you listen every week, so you're welcome on any time. Just drop us an email. I know you've got a few money in the bank, so if you want to send us money to our PayPal account, we're not set up yet.
If you want to pay for the Zoom subscription, that'd be class.
Obviously, only joking. Liam, have you got any thoughts on that, or is it just kind of a run-of-the-mill club thing that we shouldn't really think too much into?
I don't know. There's a bit of balance for me. I've got to be honest. When I first saw it, I was a wee bit worried because my initial reaction is that's just someone appointing someone. There's a bit of nepotism going on there, and I spend my day fighting against things like nepotism. So I find that quite difficult sometimes. But then I think you have to also reconcile that with the fact that we're just maybe putting someone into a role who is not going to be doing something that's quite as big a job, or the same job, I should say. Not as big a job, that's unfair, but not the same job that Graham Mathie was doing. So I think Graham Mathie is someone who's kind of come up through the ranks and has done various roles to get to where he got to, whereas Ian Gordon, as far as I know, has kind of just landed this role and hasn't had any other roles in football up until that point. Could be wrong, but that's how I see it. So it's difficult to. It's really difficult to. I'm still reflecting on it, and I still think my perspective is that Matthew did a relatively good job in the time that he was here. Yep. I know that's not everyone's point of view, and that's fine. But I do think that there's just a little bit of a worry for me in knowing the Scottish market, knowing the kind of players, signing the players of the right profile as well has been hugely important for us the last year, rather than just the scattergun recruitment of previous eras that we've talked about. So I think we just need to kind of keep that in mind, that right profile, and maybe we're looking at signing a few more players from the States. Maybe we're looking to interest that market a wee bit more. I wouldn't be against that if they're the right quality, but again, that quality part's really, really important, because there's a lot of shite in the MLS, as there is in any league in the world, but there is a lot of shite. There's a lot of shite in Europe as well. So you just got to be careful.
I think, what you're saying, I think there's been a lot of recency bias with Graham Mathie, purely off of maybe the last one or two transfer windows, but even in the windows, there's still been gems. People highlight we never signed a centre half for however long. We ended up only signing Nathan Wood on loan and that, but everyone's loving Kyle McGuinness this year, Jake Doyle Hayes, Joe Newell, Christian Doidge, and they're just players in the current team, you know what I mean? And then you've got older players like John McGinn, Dylan McGeoch, Marvin Bartley, Marciano, so if whoever comes in to head up the recruitment department on the back of that, then if they can be nearly as successful as what Matthew was, then I think we'll be all right. It'll be interesting to see long term if someone else does come in. You know what I mean? Or if it's sort of just going to be Ben Kensel, then Ian Gordon, and then your likes of Calvin Charlton, and then obviously the manager and stuff like that. It'll be interesting to see if we get a new sporting director or what sort of where the club's going in that front, because obviously Ron Gordon's a lot more hands-on than previous owners. So I almost get the impression it's like...
Well, Ewan, I'm not trying to be rude, but this was just supposed to be a throwaway segment just to keep people updated on the club. And we have been going on about it for a while. So that's hypothetical, but we can bring that up the next time, because
you guys on a time limit.
Things we don't know about. Apologies for that, Ewan, but we were going on there.
Has a podcast to discuss opinion, shares opinion, gets shut down.
Mate, shares opinion, you were sharing your life biography there.
That's what I'm saying is my sort of view on it is that Ron Gordon is probably as hands-on as Leanne Dempster was, and Ben Kensel is almost filling that Graham Mathie support function to them, because obviously previous to that, Dempster was running the show because Tom Farmer had nothing to do with it.
Harry, just before we finish, I think we need to call Ewan the rhetorical question box. Absolutely loves a rhetorical question. Just I've
had enough of this,
rhetorical questions.
I've had enough of this.
Answer any of them.
Ewan doesn't want to be host, but he still wants to ask questions.
I don't not want to be host. I just wanted you guys to get a shot at it. That's all.
You know what? To the listeners, I feel bad, because the real reason Ewan didn't want to be host for a couple of weeks is because when he's host, he gets the most abuse, but he didn't realise that he just gets abuse for being Ewan. It's nothing to do with it.
And that is complete and utter fucking bullshit, by the way.
Lads, I've got a bit of fun. I
bit of fun. I didn't get to defend myself here.
No. You get to join in with the fun. Don't worry, Ewan. So essentially, Scotland, as we said, brilliant result. Can't knock that at all. But I've got a couple of quick fire questions ahead of the game tomorrow night. We're playing the Faroe Islands. So first of all, confident about victory?
Yes.
Liam's not going to answer, but we know that Liam doesn't like answering those types of questions, so we'll leave that there.
What? No, fuck off. I don't know if you know how podcasts work. There needs to be conversation.
Despite what I said earlier, I think we'll get it done, but I don't think it'll be pretty.
I don't expect us to hammer them, but I think we'll get the job done. We were speaking about this on Saturday
I would take
night.
a Lyndon Dykes splash penalty down the middle off the keeper's shin again.
We were speaking about this on Saturday night after the Israel game, or it was maybe even before the Israel game. But the Faroe Islands and teams like that these days, albeit still not great, I think they've acclimatised to international football better, and there's not as many like Faroe Islands aren't the minnows that they once were. There's other countries that have now taken that over. You know what I mean? It's like they've acclimatized. Okay, they're not getting many results and stuff, but they're not really getting papped about as much as they have previously.
A few qualifying campaigns ago, they beat Greece home and away and ended up on like 10 or 11 points or something ridiculous. Like they honestly they've come on leaps and bounds. I mean, they're still a team who should be beaten. Let's get it straight, but they're not as much of a mug as they were, and Moldova are probably more of a mug than they are.
Well, I think Faroe Islands have beat Moldova this campaign, I think.
Aye.
Well, that was a very long answer from the Piraeus to my short.
I said yes. Like,
but anyway, a big debate this week is people have been saying Alex McLeish's biggest mistake he's done. Martin Boyle obviously doing fantastic for Australia. I think he's just banging the goals, and they've won something crazy like 11 consecutive qualifying games. But the debate's been Boyle or Dykes. But the question I'm putting to you is, for Scotland, would you rather have Kevin Nisbet at his current moment or Martin Boyle? And taking them at the age they are now, who would you rather have in the Scotland setup?
What? Oh, at the right now, if we could only have one Hibs, Boyle.
Yeah, no, but so obviously Boyle's got a few years on Nisbet. So
Boyle. Like at this very minute, Boyle. Like obviously long term Nisbet, but right now Boyle every day of the week.
I think Boyle too, only because he's different to what we've got. If that makes sense, I think Kevin Nisbet doesn't play huge number of minutes for Scotland because I don't think he brings anything that's hugely different to Shea Adams.
I think the one thing the Scotland team lacks right now, due to maybe Forrest's injuries and Ryan Fraser's very hot and cold with form, is pace and out winger, and just like we all know what Martin Boyle brings, and whether it had been through the middle or out wide, it would be another string to the bow that we currently don't have. Don't think he would start just the way Steve Clark plays, but I think he would get a lot of minutes off the bench.
Fair. This is more of a factual statement, and I just want to make sure you both agree. Fair. Everybody's been waxing lyrical about this wee boy who's only played like 10 games in his whole career. Nathan Patterson, I don't dislike the boy. I think the hype about him's a bit amped up for my liking. I don't think he's really proven that much that he should be there. But I think it's fair to say that Paul McGinn should be starting for Scotland. I think he's a better player than Stephen O'Donnell, and I think that based on how Valencia was the other day, I don't think Patterson should be starting yet. I think Paul McGinn should be starting.
Not a right wing back. He doesn't offer enough going forward.
Not a right wing back.
Yes, I would still pick Stephen O'Donnell ahead of him at right wing back because I think he offers more going forward.
If we were playing a flat back four, then I would say over the last 18 months, Paul McGinn's been the most consistent right back that's Scottish. Patterson's an interesting one, though, isn't he? Like you say, like Rangers turned down $8 million for him. Like they obviously rate him highly, but he hardly obviously I know he played against us, but he hardly gets a kick. I'd imagine they're going to have to start seriously considering shifting Tav on if you're turning $8 million down for someone, you're going to have to start playing him eventually.
And just to say, if anybody's wondering why I asked that question, we're going to clip that and we're going to at every single angry Rangers fan on Twitter. And we're going to get loads of views and listens. It's going to be great. What I was going to do an impromptu Hibby of the week, but Ewan flat out refuses to do a poll for it anymore. So I don't know if there's any value in doing that.
Seriously, no. Well, just to say, you all have the login to Twitter.
But you always say, "Oh, it's fine, guys, I'll do it." So we're thinking, "Oh, that's dealt with." So obviously, we're not going to do it. You plonk.
Right, but there's no confirmation that I will or won't do it.
Calvin Charlton was good enough to recognise his nomination on Twitter as well.
I seen it.
We didn't even put the poll up.
Do you know I seen it? And I'll hold my hands up and say that on Friday I was working. And I went, "All right, fuck, I've not done Hibby the week. I'll do it today." And then I thought, "Oh no, wait, there's no game on Saturday. I'll just tweet out on Saturday for a little bit of interaction or whatever." And then the Scotland game and everything, the day just got away from me, and I totally forgot. So apologies.
Well, we need to message Calvin, apologise, because I'm sure he was looking forward to having that up on his mantelpiece at home.
I think so. The imaginary Hibby of the Week trophy that Liam's got on his Liam's got on his mantelpiece after stating the obvious for the fucking 6 weeks in a row.
I know. Liam's
he's fighting back, Harry. He's fighting back. He didn't like that rhetorical question remark, did he? He's coming out all guns blazing.
I'm sick of this. I quit.
All right, well, guys, it's been relatively short. It's went a lot longer than I thought it would, to be fair, but I think that's a good thing, as you all love to hear our voices. But yeah, thanks very much for joining. I hope you didn't mind me gate crashing as hostess on this occasion, but thank you very much. Have a lovely week, and we'll speak to you soon.
Cheers.
Cheerio.